You know, I was able to function as an active sex addict for more than 20 years thanks to this wonderful little mechanism called denial. I've since come to understand that all sexual acting out is, to use a psychological term, disassociative. You really have to go away from yourself to do the kind of things I was doing. And so early on I learned to toggle, to kind of go away. And so I had this kind of Saint Nate persona, which I wanted to believe was the real me. And then I had this other side of me, this other person, this pirate part, whatever you want to call it, that was with no compunction at all, would violate my most deeply held values, was capable of doing almost anything. It didn't even seem to have a conscience. When I come back, I had to somehow deal with the memory of that behavior. And I did so through denial. It's like there was always this voice in the back of my head that, first of all, told me that it really wasn't that bad. It would tell me that it had only happened that once and it wouldn't happen again. It would tell me that it really wasn't affecting anybody else, it was only affecting me. Boy, is that a lie. I had no clue during those days. The wounds I was inflicting on my wife and my children, not by what I was doing, but by what I wasn't doing. The fact that I was absent most of the time physically and emotionally absent most of the time when I was physically present. This denial part of me was a great forgetter, would just shove this behavior back into a closet somewhere, and eventually it was like it never even happened. Through this denial, I was able to perpetuate in my own mind the fiction that I was just one insight away from conquering this thing. I also could sometimes white-knuckle it. I could hold it together for short periods of time. I could stay away from the porn and the hookers for a week or 2 weeks, and maybe even a month, you know. Maybe after a peak spiritual experience, or making another promise to God, or finding a new morning ritual to read this book or this part of the Bible, to pray in this way. And then I could stay away from those periods of, they weren't sobriety, they were abstinence. Those periods of abstinence served to reinforce the false idea that I could actually control this thing, which then made the shame and self-hatred all the more toxic when I inevitably fell. Because the voice said, look, you didn't have to fall. You can control it. Look, you just controlled it for 30 days. You're without excuse. This new life of recovery involves, first of all, facing the fact that there's at least one thing in my life that I'm completely powerless over. I can't control it. And that one thing makes the rest of my life unmanageable. Accepting that fact feels like dying. But Jesus said this thing. He said, you know, unless a grain of wheat falls in the ground and dies, it lives alone. But if it dies, then it brings forth fruit. I know it feels like dying to admit that you can't defeat it. But that's the door you have to go through to find a new life.